Okay, so let's look at the key to worksheet B. So you're given these relations, and you want to determine if this relation is a function. And you also want to determine what the domain and range is. So you can still talk about domain and range if it's not a function. All right, this is a circle. So right away, you know it fails the vertical line test, because notice when x is -3, right here, if I were to kind of use a ruler here, when x is -3, there's this y value. There are 2 points associated with -3. So that means that when x is -3, there are 2 y values. And so remember, the definition of function says that for each x coordinate, there's got to be only one y value associated with it. So if you use a vertical line test, and that's what the vertical line test says. So right away, you notice that it fails a vertical line test, because there are 2 different y values, and there's 2 different y values in an infinite number of places. All right, so this is not a function. Now let's talk about the domain and range. So the domain is the set of the set of x coordinates. The range is set of y coordinates. Now remember, there are an infinite number of points on this graph. Okay, there are an infinite number of points in this graph. So we're going to have to use interval notation. So to find the domain, which is a set of x coordinates, we're going to go along the x-axis like this. Now, notice that there are no arrows on this graph. So when I go along the x-axis, I touch the graph at this point here. So you got to ask yourself, what is that x coordinate? Well, that x coordinate's a -5. And so I get all these x values, -4.98, -4.722863, and so on. So I'm going from -5, and then there is a smallest x coordinate. There's a smallest x value on this graph, and that's -1. So I'm going from -5 all the way to -1. I'm sorry, +1. So -5, +1 with a bracket. You use brackets here, because -5 is associated with a point that's on the graph. +1 is associated with a point that's on the graph. All right, now let's talk about the range. The range, you go along the y-axis, and remember, it's a range is a set of y coordinates, so you go like this. So let's talk about what the y values are. Well, is -2 the smallest y value? No, it can't be, because when y is -2, there's no point of the graph associated with it. You start touching the graph when you're here, which is y equal -1. So I'm going from -1 all the way, and there's a largest y value, which is +5. So you're going from bracket -1 to +5 with a bracket. All right, now let's look at number 2. Number 2 is a line, and this is a function because it does pass the vertical line test. So if you do this, you notice it does pass the vertical line test. So there's a function. Now let's talk about domain and range. Remember, domain is the set of x coordinates, so you're going along the x-axis. So notice that these have arrows, so it constantly does this. And so notice, if you think about it, if this is -100, am I going to get a point of the graph associated when x is -100? Yes, even -1000, and so on. So I'm going from -infinity to +infinity. It never stops. And remember, infinity, -infinity, you use parentheses. The range, same idea. So if x is, see how right here, x is -4, there's a point associated with it. Same thing here. If x is -20, is there a point associated with it? Yes. -1000? Yes. So I'm going from -infinity all the way, it never stops, all the way to +infinity. All right, so it's letter B. Then the next one asks this. All right, so now these two confuse the students, because these are either vertical or horizontal lines. So if you look at this vertical line right here, and you ask yourself, is this a function? Well, you can either use the vertical line test, or you can think about what you see here. So when x is 3, you get a y value that's 1, you get a y value that's 2, you get a y value that's 3. So right away, just knowing the definition of a function, you know this is not a function. And same thing, if you use a vertical line test, notice this vertical line test intersects the graph in an infinite number of places. So that's not a function, because for each x coordinate, there's got to be only one y coordinate, and there are an infinite number of those here. So it's not a function. Let's talk about the domain. So domain, you go along the x-axis and you ask yourself, what is the smallest x coordinate that's on the graph? Well, this is the graph right here. Nothing else. You don't go any further. This is it. So the only x coordinate you see here in all these points is the x coordinate 3. That's the x coordinate 3. Now you're going to write it like this though, since it's just one element. You're going to do this. So you're going to say 3. Now, if you said x equal 3, I will give you that as well. So either of these is fine. All right. So it's not an interval because there's a finite listing here. So this is how you do it. The range, you go from along the y-axis. Notice these arrows go up and down though. So the question is -5 the smallest y value? No, because the arrow indicates this graph goes down. So you're going from negative infinity all the way to positive infinity. Okay, now in letter D, this is a function because it passes the vertical line test. So notice that when x is, you can't see it, but when x is -1, there's only one y value. When x is +4, there's only one y value. So it does pass the vertical line test. So that is a function. When we talk about domain, these are arrows. So when we talk about domain, you're going from, so the question is negative, right here, is -100, when x is -100, is there a point of the graph associated with it? Yes, because this keeps doing this. And so notice I'm going from negative infinity all the way to positive infinity for the domain. Now the range, you go along the y-axis, you're going to do just like we did here. So when I go along the y-axis, this is the only part of the graph where this ruler touches the graph. And so notice that the range, remember the range is a set of y coordinates, all these y coordinates are the same value. When x is 1, my y value is 4. When x is 2, my y value is 4. When x is 3, my y value is 4. So that's the only y value you see. So you can do it just like you did here. So you can list it as one element, just like this. Or you can say y equal 4, but you must say y because remember we're talking about the range, set of y values. Okay, so these two are a little bit more trickier for students to understand, but it should be a little bit clearer if you use the idea of a ruler to help you. It does help to use some device to get you to see how the definitions relate to what you have in front of you. Okay, so that's the key to this worksheet.